The immediate impact of the success of the Lewis and Clark expedition, being able to go do this huge transcontinental trip, talk about all the wealth and resource along the way, and be able to return, and then the explosion of the fur trade.
Hudson Bay Company made contact with us, some of their trappers, their early trappers. It wasn't until 1809 that the Northwest Fur Company established themselves on what was called Indian Meadows, our campground. They also gave us Pointed Heart, the name Pointed Heart. When they established their fur trading house, the first customers that came in were Pointed Hearts. 16 canoes full of furs and pelts arrived to trade, and traded thereafter for about a year and a half. And then a Salish house was opened up on what is now called Thompson Falls, and we would trade there, go that far. A few years later, the Northwest Fur Company opened up with the cooperation of the Pointed Hearts to show them the way down to the Spokane Falls to meet with the Spokane Indian people. And there the Spokane House was established. Around 1830, we were hit with smallpox. At that time, it was estimated by the fur company, Northwest Fur Company, that there was 5,000 Coeur d'Alenes in that area. We were hit with smallpox. Devastated the people.
People that were coming in the 1830s, they saw just bodies, literally piles of bodies of dead Indians. The American Indians didn't have the resistances to the European diseases because it wasn't a part of their living history.
The first big fur trading post that the Clallams had contact with was down at Fort Nisqually. And then later there was a fort at Victoria, and that had a huge impact right across from where we're located. It was during that time with the fur trading that there was just a lot of lawlessness, and that Wild West, image, not only with interactions between whites and Indians, but between tribes. And it was because of the way the economy was changing. People were hunting, to sell the, furs. Villages were disappearing either by disease or because of the war. Like the village of Chimacum, there was such a small population from diseases and all the changes going on that there was one war against them, 2 tribes attacking Chimacum, and they became extinct.
Back in 1852 or 53, we had a trader that was here. His name was Samuel Hancock, and he had a trading post. And so at that time in his journal, he documents how many hundreds and hundreds of people died that he was an eyewitness to, and how many weeks that epidemic went on and on. And then several years later, there was another epidemic, but on our southern side at the village of Ozette. There was a ship that went by later, I think in 1859, it was called the Good Cheer, and they had an epidemic of smallpox aboard that ship, and it was due to the people on the Good Cheer throwing items overboard, and some of those clothes and blankets had the disease on it. And I think they were just trying.
Introduction of alcohol, which had never been here before fur trading, and that had a huge impact on communities.
And then you see this huge impact on animal communities. That by 1830, I was reading traders report that the beaver were gone from Rocky Mountain streams. it was shocking. It was shocking to me when I think about how ancestors said how just the abundance. And it's hard for us to imagine that. I can't really imagine it, what kind of abundance there was, but how in a very short period of time, whole animal populations and regions were just completely gone.
Before they didn't hunt to sell, and so some of the animals became extinct in our area.
Once they realized that the sea otter fur from our area was really valued by the Chinese, they could trade and get furs here and then hike up the price by quite a huge margin. As the demand for it became more, I think we tried to meet the demand, but eventually the sea otter became overhunted.
Those men were working for the Hudson Bay, trading, and they traveled then from here down to San Francisco and back. And that's the days when the native oysters were harvested and transported down by little sailing ships that came into the bay here. There was no women here except the young Indian women. And so when they came along, you see, they tied in together with the young Indian girls, and so that's what happened to my grandmother and my great-grandmother.
My father was born of a union from the Hudson Bay Company. Those trappers, fur trappers that came down with the Hudson Bay Company, some of them married into the Indian tribes, the tribal women. People that were born of these unions were called breeds or half-breeds. They weren't very well accepted either by the non-Indian community or the Indian community.